So I think it's important to distinguish between the notion of winning and losing as a ladder, where every rung of that ladder represents a different degree of winning or losing, and the idea is mostly that we're attempting to get up further up that ladder than anybody else or other people getting down. From another notion of winning and losing, which I think is more of, I almost think of it as a matrix, as a spreadsheet of, where every row in the spreadsheet is a person in the world, and where every column in the spreadsheet is a different facet of our life and what matters to us. And to some extent, it may be, what we do to move up or down the column relative to other people, but maybe more of it is about, if there is a sum that represents all the things that are meaningful to us as an individual, and we presume that we're distributed the progression or digression that we experience in each of those facets, winning and losing may or may not be a matter of whether we get ahead of anybody else in any one aspect of that, but whether as an aggregate, what may be better for one person is only that they've progressed in one area of what matters to them versus any others that may matter to somebody else. I mean, another way of thinking about this is actually in terms of not who we are and whether we individually have progressed or not, but rather what kind of impact and influence are we having as individuals on the world around us. And rather than measuring the individual in terms of their success or failure to progress or not, measure the people that matter to them, their family, their friends, their colleagues, in part because I think that a way of representing that culmination of values is how we project those sets of values on the people that we care about, and how we, through that, amplify them, and whether they are progressing or not in the things that they care about. Look, let me speak out of both sides of my mouth here, because I think that there's two perspectives that are important to understand. First of all, yes, I do think that people are going to be impacted by AI. I think there are some jobs that may be eliminated entirely, or certainly will be transformed to the point where we don't quite identify them the same way that we do today. That said, and I feel this is probably true of most technologies anyway, but it's especially germane to AI because of its close approximation to what we considered most uniquely human about us, which is our intelligence. It has less to do, the people that will benefit from AI and the way that people will benefit from AI has less to do with their job being eliminated or preserved, and has more to do with how their job gets transformed and how they leverage AI to amplify themselves. And by that, I also mean take any given job, and if you look at it and break it down into all the activities you perform in that job, there's always a series of things that we do that all of us would find pretty mundane, pretty tedious, and the kinds of things we don't necessarily get a whole lot of satisfaction from, but even more so, aren't necessarily things that are exploiting our human intelligence. First of all, let me say, I think all of us, in this room, on the podcast, everywhere, we need to start exercising more conscious awareness of the importance of the trust that we hand out, sometimes without even thinking about it. The trust that we give to other people, that we presume in other people, in institutions, in people, in practices, in the merchants that we deal with, and so on and so forth. We have to be more conscious of that trust that we give out to them, and recognize that the trust they demand of us is tenuous, and that they need to earn that with us every day, over and over again. And that will have a tempering effect on the adoption of digital or any technological advancement. It will have a dampening effect, no doubt about it. I also think it's going to make it healthier. So the adoption of the DIG does get embraced, that does advance, that does evolve, that does innovate, will be grounded on a truth that is more sustainable than the one that I think we've slipped into as a consequence of not being conscious of that trust factor. Yes, of course. I think that when you lower the barrier to entry, it opens up the opportunity for greater innovation. The thing about innovation, though, is that not all of it is successful, and not all of it is useful, and not all of it is sustainable. So we're going to see, I think, as a consequence of that, isn't necessarily better innovation intrinsically, but it's certainly going to create a much wider diversity of innovation, and that will funnel into some sort of filtering mechanism that will, reduce that down to a few innovations that really matter and are sustainable and are effective. But I think having a better diverse base to start with is always a good thing for society. It's always a good thing for the earth. It's always a good thing for, how we as both a species in this world as well as, individually advance. So yes, I think it's a really good thing, and I do think that it democratizes, but I think the democratization actually occurs in multiple levels here. And in fact, it's one of the things that we didn't talk about when we talked about the digital economy, because there's a different way of measuring winning and losing for those people who are invested in creating the digital economy, creating innovations that advance the digital economy, and Bezos being a good example of somebody who has sort of stepped into the digital economy and created something that is unique and has added to the overall digital economy, versus those of the rest of us who may or may not ever advance in that way, but will harness and utilize the digital economy either to our advantage or to the advantage of the group around us. And I think that that's another thing to think about in terms of democratization that occurs with technology, because one of the things I really find fascinating about AI is that since it learns from data that we give it, either individually or from whatever source of data we get, it's less about the intellect that an individual put into those algorithms, and it has more to do with the collective intellect represented by the data that went into training those algorithms to perform in the future. And that's a form of democratization that we should really embrace. Not because I'm an AI bigot, but because I think that actually improves the quality of the resulting technology that we end up using. It's no longer about, let's put it in real practical terms, this one doctor's opinion about how to diagnose a disease and how to treat it. It's about this entire collection of doctors and their aggregate intelligence that in some cases cancels out the bad intelligence that other doctors have, in other cases amplifies, common knowledge and intelligence amongst that group. And I think that that is a really powerful idea.